Welcome back to Watch the Booker Man and to episode number 36 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010. And the first thing that I need to put across before I go any further is that I had some audio issues when recording the first hour of this show the first time round. This is the second time I'm trying it, so what you're hearing from now until the end of hour one is recorded after I ran the show in the game. So if any of the clicks on screen or reactions seem a little bit off, it's because I'm currently reading from a transcript of what I said the first time round. This time, hopefully, the sound will be much better. Well, it definitely will be if you're hearing this. Nonetheless, we come off the back of a big episode of Impact the previous week. Kurt Angle making a successful defense of the World Heavyweight Championship over Brian Kendrick, and the debut of wrestling's greatest tag team, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin. As always, we are in the Impact Zone as we continue the build to Hard Justice. And the show itself begins with footage from earlier in the day, the World Heavyweight Champion arriving and being pounced on immediately by Jeremy Borash. He asked Kurt Angle about the challenge laid down last week by Samoa Joe, and that was then backed up by Desmond Wolfe. Brian Kendrick had previously said that if he won the World Heavyweight Championship, he would happily face both challengers in a three-way, and JB wants to know if Kurt is willing to do the same, make that same offer. Angle is annoyed by this question and keeps walking towards the entrance. Borash pushes him for an answer, which does cause Kurt to stop. He says that he isn't the matchmaker here, so JB had better go to Paul Heyman if he wants the answer to that kind of question. So we're just recapping there the end of last week's show, not with a video package, but with an interview with Kurt, the challenge laid down, the champion providing well in this segment as we go into the opening sequence, the credits, which is followed by Maro and Taz welcoming viewers to the show, recapping the events of last week, leading into a video package. During that, we see Kurt Angle's victory over Brian Kendrick in the main event, as well as the debut of Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, who made a winning start to their careers as wrestling's greatest tag team against British Invasion. We'll hear from Haas and Benjamin tonight. The commentators also put over our main event, Abyss versus Jay Lethal. We'll also look more into that rivalry later on in the show. We then move in to the opening contest, which is Amazing Red versus Matt Morgan. Part of that ongoing rivalry, Bad Influence have been up against Hernandez, Amazing Red, and now Homicide. And Red picks up a surprising victory over Matt Morgan in 9 minutes and 43. It's fair to say that Morgan probably could have had the match won before that time, but he decided he wanted to send a message to Amazing Red. This didn't sit well with Hernandez, who came out to back up his friend, only for Daniels and Kazarian to then themselves get involved. Homicide eventually came out and evened the odds, and in the distraction that this caused, Red was able to catch Morgan off guard with an athletic flash victory for the win, perhaps an assistance from Homicide and Hernandez along the way. A 56 from Amazing Red, a 60 from Matt Morgan. Two decent performances as we advance that storyline. A big victory for Amazing Red, but Morgan is unlikely to take this lightly. Bad Influence do, however, trudge up the ramp, tails between their legs. Daniels and Kazarian convincing Matt Morgan to save his aggression and his frustration for another time. This was a fluke and he doesn't need to go back and get revenge. They're maybe a little bit tentative of getting into it with Hernandez and Homicide once again. In the ring, Hernandez remains cautious of his former partner until Red says something to him off microphone. Amazing Red tells Hernandez that he doesn't have to like him, they don't even have to trust Homicide, but right now, they need him. Homicide says that Hernandez should listen to Red, and we do see that Hernandez loosens up a little bit. He takes a microphone, he's softened his stance, and he says that he's already questioning the words that are about to come out of his mouth, but he's challenging Bad Influence to a match at Hard Justice. Morgan, Kazarian and Daniels versus Hernandez, Amazing Red and Homicide. So a 51 rating as we confirm the first official reunion of Homicide and Hernandez. They're not going by LAX just yet, but they're back in the ring on the same side together at Hard Justice, losing heat to the storyline. That's presuming that the challenge is accepted. Not far off where the other segments in this have been though, so I'm happy with the segment and how it further builds the face turn of Homicide. This is a mid-card storyline, so 51 isn't something that I'm too upset about. Up next, we get a backstage interview with the Knockouts champion Madison Rayne and her partner for tonight, Jazz. Despite previous claims that there was no alignment between the two of them, they present a very united front ahead of their match with Awesome Kong and Tara. Reign does, however, have some complaints about sharing a ring with Awesome Kong, saying that after everything she's done for that woman, whatever that means, it's an outrage that she's on the opposite side of the ring to her, and this is something she should not have to be subjected to. She is, however, confident that Jazz has Tara's number tonight, and that just leaves her to come up with the rest of the strategy for the team. So she's confident on that side, but when it's Reign v Awesome Kong, there's only one favourite, unless Reign has something up her sleeve. A 58 rating. Reign is pretty reliable with a promo. She always does a decent job and gains heat to Tara's storyline with Jazz, so good stuff there. Elsewhere in the back, in the locker room specifically, says Jay Lethal and Maria in the text there, but I only put Jay Lethal and Creed on screen, so Jay Lethal approaches Creed in the back. The double X Division and Global Champion asking his Lethal Consequences partner if the rumours are true. Is he really considering signing with Larry Sweeney? Austin laughs, saying that last week Lethal told the world that he had bigger issues to deal with and that Creed's business wasn't his business. So Austin asks, what's changed, Lethal? Lethal says that Maria had a word with him about how he came across last week and he accepts that he may have stepped out of line. To make it up to his buddy, Lethal has got him an X Division title #1 contenders match on Explosion, and if he wins that, he'll face Jay Lethal next week on Impact. Austin Creed is clearly won over by this, but Lethal adds the implication that he needs Creed's word that he won't sign anything with Larry Sweeney before then, otherwise he won't get the shot. Desperate for the opportunity, Creed says that Lethal doesn't need to worry about him making any hasty decisions about his future. Seemingly Lethal and Creed would go in their separate ways, but Lethal doesn't want to see that, and it's an alright segment, the idea being that Jay Lethal's trying to pour cold water on the potential alignment between Creed, Larry Sweeney and Kazuchika Okada, and he's using his pull a little bit. You could say he's being a bit of a dick in a way, but he gets his partner back on side, and I'll recap Explosion at the end of this show, and we'll see who will go on to face Jay Lethal just 3 nights before Hard Justice next week on Impact. We then go into that aforementioned Knockouts tag team match, and it's a bit of a trope or a staple of my booking. Tara and Jazz, involved in that personal rivalry, end up brawling off with each other away from the ring. This leaves the Knockouts champion without her backup. She protests to the referee for the match to be thrown out. If them two aren't in the ring, then it can't go on, before she turns into the reality of the situation. Awesome Kong stood behind her. Kong destroys Madison Rayne, pinning her, it says on screen, with a flying splash. I was thinking the implant buster, but whatever it is, it's a decisive pinfall win. Kong and Tara winning in 9 minutes and 28. Jazz the weak link, and a really disheartening 34 performance from her there. Actually, Dixie personally extended Jazz's contract. I was going to wait and see how she did before making any decision, and with that rating I'm not 100% sure I would have kept her on. Maybe I'd have given her another couple of months. She's only got an ongoing agreement, so I can't end it at any time, but Dixie taking the steps to keep her on, and after that performance she might be regretting that. Everyone else about where I expected them to be, and Madison Rayne, the Knockouts champion, taking the pinfall from Awesome Kong. That generally only leads a storyline in one direction, and the segment that follows reiterates this, an emphatic message sent from a challenger who has in some ways appeared from out of nowhere. The commentators put this over, suggesting that Kong may just be the new top contender in the division. Sarah Del Rey, Sarita and Taylor Wilde will be in action against each other later tonight. They'll be looking to stake their claim towards a title shot, but with a pinfall victory over the Knockouts champion, Awesome Kong may well have usurped every single one of them. Desmond Wolfe is then interviewed by Jeremy Borash, the topic of conversation being that potential World Heavyweight Championship 3-way at Hard Justice. Wolfe says that it pains him to admit it, but for once, he agrees with Samoa Joe. Brian Kendrick was willing to face the challenge of Desmond Wolfe and Samoa Joe at the upcoming pay-per-view, so the only question remaining is whether Kurt Angle is too much of a coward to make that same challenge. Wolfe says that the ball is in Kurt Angle's court, and if he doesn't push for that match to be made, he's going to lose a lot of respect, not only from the locker room, but from the TNA fans. Some masterful improvising there, further pushing the storyline that we have going, and Maro and Taz keep the show going, introducing another recap of the debut of wrestling's greatest tag team. Taz speaks about knowing the pair pretty well from their days together in the WWE, and he says that it's been a long time since he's been this excited about 2 new signings in TNA. He says that the game has changed in the tag team division, and he can't wait to see the 2 of them in action again. Before the 3rd match of the night, Mr. Anderson cuts an in-ring promo about his opponent Roderick Strong, and also puts over his 5-match win streak since Slammiversary. but apparently that's not enough for Paul Heyman. We're playing into this idea that he's not lived up to his potential yet, but he feels that his win-loss record speaks for itself and he's doing a pretty good job. He's going to give Paul Heyman, however, the asshole that he believed in, the one that he was so desperate to sign, and he's going to start tonight. He spoke with Heyman before the show, and if he beats Roderick Strong up next, he will be next in line for a global championship shot at Hard Justice. He's sorted himself a little deal out there with the boss, showing that he's still maybe getting a little bit of favouritism. We've not explicitly shown that, but there's certainly the implication that he's one of Paul Heyman, well, a Paul Heyman guy before Paul Heyman guys existed. Anderson then readies himself for Roderick Strong, who stumbles out from the back for his entrance. It appears, and is pretty clear actually, that Strong has been attacked in the gorilla position while he was waiting to come out. Big Rob and Sean Bashir are initial suspects. There will have been witnesses to that, there's no question, but Taz points out that Strong has more enemies than allies in TNA, and the New Age incident from last week, where he rejected their offer by kicking Jimmy Jacobs in the face, means that the Elite aren't the only possible attackers. The Elite being Rob Terry and Sean Bashir. A good segment though, Mr. Anderson doing what he does best, always good on the microphone, successfully advancing a couple of storylines at the same time, and that's something we need to tap into with Mr. Anderson. It's all well and good having him as this mid-card guy, but there are very few guys. In fact, I'd be surprised if there's anybody on our roster who has better entertainment skills than him. While we don't know for sure who was responsible for the attack on Roderick Strong yet, it does of course play into the match. Mr. Anderson picking up that victory, Roderick Strong doing well to last almost 11 minutes against him, but a mic check to an already disoriented opponent seals the victory. A really good match to end the action for the first hour of the show. A 73 from Mr. Anderson is encouraging. We can definitely, with a bit of good booking, get him up into the 80s, I think. And Roddy doing well. 62, given his position on the card and his popularity and the fact that he's only been here for a few months and he's never been on national TV like Mr. Anderson has. I'm happy with that performance. The great chemistry obviously giving the match a boost. After the match, a contented Mr. Anderson with his title shot secured. He heads up the ramp. This has got nothing to do with him now, but he does cross paths with Mick Foley, who comes down to the ring alone. Jimmy Jacobs, we're told, is at home recovering, but the commentators assume that Foley is here to get the first step of revenge for the New Age at the very least. Instead, however, he helps Roderick Strong back to his feet. Strong, like everybody else, is confused and shrugs Foley off. He doesn't need his help, pushing him away and going to leave. Foley then takes a microphone telling him that the New Age they need him, and soon Strong will realise that he needs the New Age too. Roderick Strong still isn't interested. Somehow the New Age aren't getting this message that he does not want to join their group. When Roddy goes sort of through the curtain, when he's no longer visible, Foley asks what it will take for him to open his mind and embrace their project. For some reason, the New Age are adamant about getting Strong on board. I just realised actually the initials TNA, the New Age is TNA. That's pretty cool actually. I'm going to bring that in going forward. It's just the way it is on my screen now, bolded. I've noticed the initials, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, they've got their hearts set on him joining the group. Got distracted by that there, I really like that. Mick Foley improvises well as he continues to carry this storyline. Roderick Strong's plan of going it alone, doing his own thing, not going well at the minute. But that's the first hour, and we're going to go now into the hour 2 that was actually recorded at the time. And returning to the second hour of the show, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin come down to the ring, wrestling's greatest tag team, addressing their debut from last week. Of course, we saw them make their in-ring debut, but this is the first time that we're going to hear from them, their intentions in TNA, and they put over TNA as the place to be for tag team wrestling, and they do give credit to Paul Heyman for showing them how much he wanted them to join his project. When Heyman is behind somebody, he will really do whatever it takes to get them into the company before they can do much more other than putting over the company, the fans, and just pandering as they would. Desmond Wolfe cuts them off. He says that he knows that they will have been speaking to Kurt all week and he wants them to tell him why the champion is hiding. Nobody's seen him all night. Surely Kurt Angle isn't afraid of that challenge that was made last week. Wrestling's greatest tag team then jump to Kurt's defence, but Samoa Joe is soon out from the back. Also, he follows the same line, looking for answers, but Haas and Benjamin say they can't and won't speak for the champion. With pressure building, Kurt Angle does finally come out and he's at the end of his tether. He reiterates that he does not make the matches in TNA, but if Heyman's willing to make the match, then fine. He'll face both Samoa Joe and Desmond Wolfe at Hard Justice. Advancing 2 storylines there and gaining heat to 1 with a good segment, and while it says that Charlie Haas performed poorly in a 79 rated segment, I'm not going to single out anybody as a negative there, and a lot of green notes that we can see, including good improvisation from both Shelton Benjamin and Samoa Joe. Kurt Angle as well, actually, and Angle and Joe also coming out looking well, got the crowd hotter. All in all, a very successful segment, and it intertwines 2 different things that we've got going on. Cutting to the office of Paul Heyman, then we continue this. This is almost an extension of that angle. Douglas Williams and Brutus Magnus tell the man in charge that they want a rematch against wrestling's greatest tag team. While the open challenge was their idea, they know things would have been different had they got the chance to prepare for Hassan Benjamin. Paul Heyman says that it might be tricky for him to fit that onto the Hard Justice card, but he thinks he's got a better idea. They can go and find their British buddy Desmond Wolfe. They pull their face about that again. He said the same to Desmond Wolfe last week. Other than both being British, there's no indication that these guys are friends, but Heyman seems to think they are, and he says, go find Wolfe, tell him that next week on Impact, the 3 of them will team up against wrestling's greatest tag team and Samoa Joe. So perhaps a little tease there that it could have been a Team Angle reunion, but it is actually Joe who will be teaming with those on the Go Home show to Hard Justice. Joe and Wolfe in the ring together just 3 days before that huge pay-per-view title match. Also during that segment, Heyman does confirm that, yeah, he's going to make that match. A triple threat that almost was going to serve as a number 1 contendership match until that twist earlier in the night when Awesome Kong actually pinned the Knockouts champion, Sarah Del Rey, winning tonight over Sarita and Taylor Wilde in 12 minutes and 6 seconds. Specifically, she makes Sarita submit to a cross armbreaker. I did think I'd put this as a pinfall finish, but I must have just put no note either way, so it's defaulted to a submission. I'm fine with that, really, and while Sarah Del Rey puts in a good performance, Sarita is actually slightly better, but these 3 are all really good, all coming into their own as singles wrestlers, and it is a 62 rating, which is a strong match. As Sarah Del Rey stands tall in the ring, the music of Awesome Kong hits. Kong makes her way down to the ring and goes nose to nose with Del Rey. The first time these 2 women have come together in TNA, Mauro and Taz are initially uncertain about this confrontation until they get it in their ear. They hear what Awesome Kong must have already known. A huge match will take place next week, confirmed by Mauro. Awesome Kong versus Sarah Del Rey, the winner facing Madison Rayne for the Knockouts Championship at Hard Justice. So losing heat to the storyline, unfortunately, but it does give us a clear indication of where we're going next week. Sarah Del Rey v Kong, a massive match, and we're going to try and promote this throughout the night and throughout the week as a huge Knockouts clash. Return to the backstage area. The cameras arrive on the scene of a brawl that was broken out in, I think, the locker room between the New Age and Daphne and Roxy. It appears that Daphne and Roxy were the instigators, and the fight spills into the Knockouts locker room. So seemingly it started in a corridor and then went through the door into the Knockouts locker room, and this is where the beautiful people get caught in the crossfire, caught completely unaware by both the brawl and the intrusive cameras. They're furious to be disturbed. They run away from the cameras, grab their stuff and leave the locker room. Eventually there's enough people to come between the 2 teams, but tempers are clearly very high as we return to ringside. Again, an average segment, not particularly good, but it's continuing. Daphne and Roxy, who will be known going forward as DNR, against the New Age storyline. As we go into a tag team match, Motor City Machine Guns, our number 1 contenders, defeat Jesse Neal and Rhino in a one-sided match with a Made in Detroit. Jesse Neal, the weak link. Sabin and Shelley very much on a similar level to one another, in fact the exact same level. Rhino with a 52. The only real note from this is that Beer Money are in commentary, putting over that the match will take place at Hard Justice, a 2 out of 3 falls match, and as Motor City Machine Guns celebrate, Beer Money get up from the table but keep their headsets on. They admit that they are impressed by the now 3rd best tag team in TNA. Maranello does put over though the fact that next week we'll see the stipulations confirmed for the 2 out of 3 falls match. That's 3 nights before what is being billed as the final showdown between Storm and Rude and Sabin and Shelley. Storm clearly saying a few words there because he didn't do well without a script. We can assume that Robert Roode did okay, but yeah, just building to that huge match at the pay-per-view. And we cut to the back, 2 guys who don't seem to have a particular direction after last week's events. Jerry Borash approaches Brian Kendrick and Paul London in their personal hangout where they're always pretty much seen, asking Brian Kendrick for a reaction to his defeat last week to Kurt Angle in the World Heavyweight Championship match. He's bringing it back to the interview from last week where Kendrick showed a bit more fire and a bit more hunger and determination, and JB is saying, are we going to see more of that? Brian Kendrick shrugs and says that he's kind of accepted that he can't control what goes on around him, but he's just going to keep doing what he's always done, keep fighting and keep winning when the opportunities arise. Last week he said that he would never be overlooked again, and he pushed Kurt Angle. He came seconds away from victory, and when he gets his next shot at the World Heavyweight Championship, he's going to make sure that he's going to go one step further and he's going to take that opportunity. Paul London also says some words reiterating this point, talking about his match with Samoa Joe and saying that there is no reason that they can't be perceived on the same level as those three guys who will take place in the World Heavyweight Championship match at the upcoming Hard Justice pay-per-view. London and Kendrick see themselves on the same level as Desmond Wolfe, Samoa Joe, and even the World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle. Before our main event, a video package recaps the rivalry between Jay Lethal and Abyss for those who might not be up to speed with it, going back to Lethal's Global Championship victory at Sacrifice in that three-way match. Abyss's actions in the aftermath of that match resulted in the Monster being suspended from TNA, but upon his return, the rivalry once again resumed. When Abyss appeared to stalk Maria a few weeks ago, Jay Lethal ignited the personal animosity between the two, and as a result, on his request, the following match was made. And we go into the main event, and it is actually a disqualification finish. Two guys who I'm trying to protect, really. Of course, Abyss hasn't had a pinfall or submission against him throughout the entirety of my booking, not just going back to January, but to the 2 months that I booked before, back on TEW 2016. So this is a long-running thing, but he has gone a little bit off the rails recently. He's not been as dominant. Count-out loss, defeat where he wasn't actually involved in the fall in that triple threat match that we previously mentioned. The finish here is to advance the storyline as much as anything. Abyss is very much in control. He's being the monster heel that we know him as. Maria tries to stop him, and Abyss grabs her arm, drags her to the outside, and it's not so much that he's going to do anything to her, but he's sort of warning her to keep out of the business. He's going to end Jay Lethal, and she's just going to have to watch. Lethal understandably sees red with his girlfriend being treated like this, grabs a steel chair, the nearest thing he can find, and hits Abyss with it from behind, and he just lays into Abyss until Abyss is down, until he feels that Maria is safe. He doesn't care about losing the match at this point. He goes over to check on his girlfriend, and this is continuing the storyline that we've been doing with Jay Lethal. In a way, he's going from boy to man, I feel. He's very much been a wholesome character. He was doing the Macho Man impersonation this time last year. So I'm quite happy that we've gone quite far with Jay Lethal and making him more of a serious threat. He holds 2 belts, but also we want to see a bit more ruthlessness, a bit more edge. He's always going to be that nice guy, but tonight he's showing that he's not going to be a pushover on any circumstances, particularly when it comes to his girlfriend Maria. And as Jay Lethal checks on the shaken Maria, quite a few red notes for this, I'll get to that after, but Abyss returns to his feet behind him. Jay Lethal took him down, but he didn't keep him down. Unfortunately, with Lethal so focused on Maria, he fails to realise that the monster is back up. When Maria points this out, it's already too late. Abyss grabs Jay Lethal by the hair, setting him up for a chokeslam on the steel steps in the ring. He throws Lethal in the ring, he throws some steps in the ring. However, before he can hit the move, Jeff Hardy runs out from the back. As promoted last week, he was going to call out Abyss. It's actually the other way around. Abyss is already in the ring. The monster tosses Jay Lethal aside and sets himself for Jeff Hardy coming at him, but he takes the fight straight to Abyss. Using these steps to run up, Jeff Hardy launches his entire body at Abyss, sending him over the top and to the outside. Abyss then returns to his feet on the ramp and stares down the charismatic Enigma. Jeff Hardy taking a microphone from ringside and challenging Abyss to a match. He wants the monster at Hard Justice, and with what happened a couple of weeks ago, he wants a last man standing. So it's a 77, which is a good segment to end the show, but he does say Jay Lethal underperformed, and while Jeff Hardy did a masterful job and was the real star of the segment, the announcing and the colour commentary let it down. So fair enough, Jeff Hardy and the Abyss storyline advancing. There's obviously here unfinished business between Jay Lethal and Abyss, but for now, that is the secondary thing. We've got Jay Lethal versus Mr. Anderson confirmed for the pay-per-view. We've also now got a challenge from Jeff Hardy to Abyss, which, spoiler, he is going to accept. A 75 rating is another solid episode. This is now at a point where 75 is average, which on one hand, I did want the show to be a little bit better, but by the same token, that's showing how consistent we've got, increasing our popularity in 14 regions. Just see what happens in the post-match. And the other thing is, something I forgot to do last week, to look at Ring of Honor and how they're currently doing. I will just look at Explosion as well. Show that on screen there, free for anybody to read. Gen Me defeating the Elite, which is not the group that they obviously became known for. It's Big Rob and Sean Bashir, referencing their past in the World Elite. Two guys from the World Elite were also in action. Eric Young defeating Kiyoshi. DNR followed up that brawl with the New Age by defeating Lacey Von Erich and Brooke Tessmacher. And then Amazing Red actually defeated Austin Creed, which makes him the number one contender ahead of next week's X Division Championship match. So this Thursday coming, the next episode, the go-home show to Hard Justice, will be Amazing Red versus Jay Lethal for the X Division Championship before Jay Lethal has to defend his title 3 nights later at the pay-per-view against Mr. Anderson. So a very, very busy week for him, as well as having that ongoing sort of slow burn feud with Abyss going on. Bobby Lashley does that. Right, so he's got a written contract with us, so he's definitely staying with us until for another 2 months. So that's something I definitely need to keep an eye on, actually. Oh, so he's not interested in the deal with New Japan, which is quite surprising. Brooke Tessmacher getting praise from Shelton. This is another really good side of having Shelton Benjamin with the company. It's something I didn't expect and something I didn't realise, but he's taking on a bit of a leadership role, like we've seen from Kurt Angle in the first 8 months, 6 months, whatever it was, of this save. It's good to see somebody come into the locker room and already have that authority. Ratings similar to where they have been, but we will now look at Ring of Honor, and the first thing that I'll note is that they're not doing that well. For some reason in the mod, they owned the Noah Dojo. I don't know what that was based on, but they've also had to sell their own academy, so financial trouble is definitely brewing in Ring of Honor. And in real life, it was actually mid-2011, I think, that they were bought by Sinclair. So the way things are going at the minute, it could actually be that they need buying out in mid-2011. Maybe TNA with all our money. I think we've got about 20-odd million in the bank. Just throwing that out there as a possibility, but I'll just scroll through the roster briefly. Obviously, you can pause this if you want to see things more specifically, but what I'm just going to do is show the titles, which is Colt Cabana as the nationwide title, which they actually created. Austin Aries still holds the world title. Kevin Steen and Generico have won the tag team titles, and the women's title, which they also created, is currently held by Angel Orsini. We'll just look at their top 100s as well, just to see the best events. Not too much you can take from that, but Austin Aries is definitely somebody who we should be looking at, because his matches with Roderick Stronger in the top 2, albeit one of them being a 4-way, and the American Wolves featuring heavily in those top matches. So probably people, we've already got them on our shortlist, but definitely guys who I've got an eye on. And if things do go south for Ring of Honor, there'll certainly be some of the guys that we'll be looking at, but given how talented this roster is, you could pretty much take half of this roster and you'd be happy with them on your TNA roster. We probably would have to go maybe even for a brand split if we brought all these in. A really, really talented roster, as I said. And here we see Jerry Lynn, Davey Richards, Tyler Black, Austin Aries and Sonjay Dutt as their top guys. That's another one who is a TNA alumni who I've got on the shortlist, Sonjay Dutt. Other than Jerry Lynn, and that's probably only because of his age at the time in this game, I'm interested in all of those and plenty of people in Ring of Honor. But this isn't about Ring of Honor. This is about TNA. The other thing is, I've also booked the 4th Evolve show, which I will show on screen now. All that said, things are going well in TNA, building to that Hard Justice pay-per-view, the long-term vision on Bound for Glory, but next week, the go-home show promises to be another excellent episode, main evented by Desmond Wolfe and the British Invasion, going up against the wrestling's greatest tag team, and Samoa Joe. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll be back for that in 6 days' time.